Are you journeying through grief and needing a little extra support, inspiration, healing, and guidance? Join me in turning your losses into gains. Hi, my friend. I'm Tara Accardo, creator of the Losses Become Gains online community, blog, and now podcast. I'm an only child who lost both parents to cancer within 6 months of each other, followed by my sweet fur baby soon after. After all of this, I knew I was meant to do more with what I had been through. And now, that means supporting and empowering grievers just like you. I'm a wife, friend, grieving daughter, writer, course creator, loss advocate turned grief coach, and I'm here to support you and move you through your grief. I want for you to feel like I'm your friend in the grief space and know that whatever you're going through, there's someone out there who just gets it. Few topics are off limits here because grief and loss don't hold back either. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of what all of this means for you, some coping tools, lifestyle topics, and impactful mindset shifts to take you from just surviving to thriving after loss. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and show up with an open heart and mind. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Losses Become Gains podcast, my friend. Today's episode is truly such a full circle moment for me because I had the pleasure of chatting with Claire McDonald, who is actually a childhood friend of mine from the East Coast back in my Pennsylvania days. And we've known each other since, I want to say like first grade. And while life took me to California and ultimately took us in different directions and all the things over the years, thanks to good old social media, we reconnected and have been following each other and each other's journeys for many years. But her story is no ordinary story, and it is truly like nothing else I've shared on the podcast so far. And there's a very specific reason I wanted to have her join me today. Number one, she is the creator of SoulSpheres, which are these stunning, stunning necklaces. I'm literally wearing mine right now that weigh 21 grams to represent the weight of the soul and remind us that as beings, our experience here, our existence here goes beyond our physical body, which I think is such an important and beautiful reminder. But moreover, she shares her story of coping with anxiety throughout her 20s and as a result has a deeply life-changing event happen to her that, to use her words, broke her open. I had absolute chills when I heard that, you guys. I had never heard someone use a phrase like that when talking about coming out of such a traumatic event. And you are going to want to hear not only her story, but our incredible conversation about what it really means to rediscover yourself and your life and your soul after loss. And whether that's the loss of a person, a loss of self or identity, a loss of safety and comfort, the list goes on. Now, just a bit of a trigger warning here. Part of Claire's story does involve some drug use, and there's mention of overdosing and being in the hospital as a result. So if this is at all a difficult topic for you to hear because of something you or a loved one has gone through, please, please, please feel free to come back to this episode at a later time. You can skip it completely for now, no hard feelings. You can also skip over that part specifically. The mention of this drug use and this experience begins, I want to say, around like the 19 and a half minute mark of this conversation. So just in case you want to be wary of that, I wanted to give you a heads up. So without further ado, let's get into this amazing episode. Hello, Claire. Welcome to the Losses Become Gains podcast. I am so excited to have you here. As I mentioned in the intro, we certainly have a little backstory, but today is all about you. So I'm super excited to dig into this, talk all about your journey, SoulSpheres, all the things. So just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so good to be here. So good. This is so surreal.
I know, it is so funny and great.
Well, I love to kind of just start these off with you just telling us a little bit about who you are outside of any loss or grief, or just, we'll get into all of that, but
Sure.
just tell everyone just a little bit about you and who you are.
Yeah. So it's such a great question. I'm someone who's trying to figure out what that is.
I've never gotten that answer yet. That's so good.
Yeah, I like it's funny because I honestly like in what I'm doing, it's been such a challenge for me over the past 6 months since I started SoulSpheres, since I was like, you know what? Because SoulSpheres was an idea that I had 10 years ago,
Right.
12, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, in my BFA, like my degree project out of college. And I was walking around with my husband, we were walking the dog, and I was like, man, if I had like done SoulSpheres when TikTok was around, 10 years ago, like imagine where to be right now. And I was like, I should try it. And then I was like, that's insane. I shouldn't do that. I'm doing way too many things. And then within like a week, I was starting it and I was doing it. Yeah. I was like, yeah, we're doing this. And the thing that's been most challenging for me is figuring out my voice and figuring out like, who am I? What is my value? And going like, well, does there need to be a definition? And then it's wrapping in the whole like, okay, well, I'm just valuable regardless of any of it. Forget who I am. Like, I'm just me. I'm Claire. Hi. Yeah. Like, this is it. I think instead of sharing who I am from a what do I do perspective, like I'm professionally in software sales, which is not where my heart lies. I'm good at it, but it's not my, calling.
Doesn't really light you up.
Yeah, it doesn't light me up. I love the people I work with and all that good stuff. But and I'm starting SoulSpheres and growing that with this jewelry brand that I'm starting, that the pendants weigh 21 grams to represent the weight of the soul, right? For anyone who's tarot obviously knows, but and like, so that's what I'm doing. But like, who am I? Who am I aside from all that other stuff? I mean, I think I'm someone who is really invested in living a life that I really love and living a life that feels good and that helps other people do the same thing. And so being really focused on healing, really focused on my journey in that space. And when I say healing, right, it's healing from stuff that's happened, but like, I think we're all on a healing journey. We're all literally, I had written in a journal entry the other day about being able to remember who it is that we are when we like just first show up. We're little babies, right? And we're just these perfect little beings that don't have any of this crap yet, right? And then we have to spend our whole lives basically unlearning it. Yeah. So I guess I'm in a process of unlearning and trying to figure out, what does that look like and feel like? And I guess I'm realizing more and more that maybe it doesn't matter who I am beyond just me.
Just I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe that's
that is all we are, really. We are just beings here. And that's like one thing that I love to say is like, sometimes we just need to be. We don't need to do. It's not about exactly what you said, what we do and what we do for our job and everything. And that is sometimes the answer I get on. And that's why I love to open that question up to people who come on the podcast, because I want them to answer however they do.
Yeah.
But I think that's so beautiful the way you just answered that, because it also gives anyone listening here the permission to just be themselves. But also, I love that you said like, I'm learning, I'm relearning, I'm, rewiring, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like, you're going through this beautiful journey of, I'm going to say trying to figure it out, but like, also, when do we ever fully have it figured out? We don't, because we're ever evolving. So like, I love that, because it's kind of like, okay, let's take some of the pressure off. Like, we don't need to have it figured out. But when it comes to, the grief and loss space, certainly like there is such a big relearning that has to happen. So as if we're not doing that already,
right?
For any grievers, especially listening here, like that process and that journey is very complicated, and it's it just takes it to a whole nother level, and we'll definitely get into that. But I think that's just such a beautiful way to answer that question, because we don't have to have all the answers, and that's a beautiful process. It can be a very overwhelming process.
Yeah, it's really overwhelming.
I mean, let's call it here. Yeah. But it's so beautiful, and it's very eye-opening, and there's so much we can learn as we're doing that. So
yeah, I think it's feels like the more difficult path than being like, oh, I'm Claire and I did this and I do that and whatever. And like, that's great when everything's working out perfectly, which is rare. Yeah. But when it's not working out perfectly, that can feel like, oh, it's not enough. Yeah. What I am is not enough. And like, that's not great. That's not great.
Not ideal.
No. And I think what's so like interesting to me and really wonderful, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep doing this because like I said, my camera decides to like unfocus on me. So if you see me like just randomly like doing a little like hand motion, that's what that is. But talking about like just be, literally, I think it was my 30th birthday. We were in Mexico and we were at this like just incredible vacation for my 30th birthday. And I just got so clear that I was like, I just need more time to just be. Yeah. And like, it was such a strong pull to just be myself, meaning like more time to just literally sit in a chair and just experience life, right? Just experience the energy of the world, like to literally just be and do nothing. I was like, I need more of this in my everyday life. That's amazing. So I haven't figured that one out right quite yet.
That's easier said than done.
It is definitely easier said than done. And, there is this kind of like, well, there's no endpoint. So you kind of just have to make the space for it now because this is it. Right. So I'm working on that. But I think what's so interesting to me is that message came so strongly in for me. And then since I've started this journey and like the people I've connected with on social media, just seeing the people that are like coming up, I'm hearing so many people say the same thing about learning to just be. And I'm like, I know this isn't like a new thing. It's not new, but it's very interesting. Yeah. But it seems like it's coming up more and more in the collective consciousness.
Yes.
More recently, which is interesting.
Yeah. Could not agree more. And that's a beautiful like paradigm shift. I think we do need more of that. I think we are like, I was recently finished, at least as of the time of this recording, I recently finished a certification to become like a soul purpose and spiritual, transformational life coach. And that was that we had talked about was like, there is this awakening happening. We are in our own way getting back to our roots, so to speak. And I don't know if that's because of technology or whatever. Like people are kind of like, as much as technology is completely taken over in so many ways, I think it has, between that and COVID and all these crazy things have woken us up a little bit to be like, I am not good with where things have been or where things are going or whatever. And it's amazing to watch. And it's even more amazing to witness. And that's definitely what I want to get into today. That's kind of the premise of losses become gains in a way, not to, completely, I guess, necessarily uproot your life. It's very much like, okay, how do we move forward after grief?
Right.
But the principle is the same. It's how do we go from, okay, we're here, we're not living our best, most fulfilled life, whether that's after loss or not, depends on the person. Right. But then, okay, where do we go from there? And how do we get there, but without almost kind of like putting pressure on the process? Because like our intuition and our guides and all the things like that can take us there if we allow it, if we wake up and listen to it. So I think it's just a beautiful evolution that you've been through. And I'd love to kind of get into your story a little bit. We're definitely going to get into SoulSpheres because I think, that is such a part of your evolution and story and waking upness.
Yeah, I would agree on that one for sure.
Yeah. And it's such a long time coming too, which is, just so interesting to me also. So with that all being said, whatever you're comfortable sharing here, I know we've shared a little bit offline, but like, just tell anyone listening here, like just a little bit about your journey. I'm not even going to say so much of like grief and loss. I know we kind of talked about this, like on this podcast, we have typically focused on a lot of like deaths of loved ones. You know, these more, I'm going to say the word tangible deaths because I don't have a better word for it right now.
No, I think you're right on that.
You know, it's just a little more like, okay, this is a physical loss in my life, but you have really been through something so profound in that it's more almost like a little bit of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but almost like more of a loss of self. And I just really want this episode. I think this episode is so much about that, right? It's everything we've talked about so far. It's like, okay, what do, you know, these traumas or whatever that we go through, and how do we process that and journey through that and take that and move us forward from there. And you have such an inspiring story. So, yeah, again, whatever you'd like to share here.
Yeah. So absolutely. So when I was 29, this was how much sooner than that 30th birthday?
I was going to say, you've had a lot going on in your 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a whole, I guess I have to back up before then, because I had a whole experience in my 20s. I never had anxiety really as a teen. You know, I had some moments where I was kind of like angsty and like a little bit depressed and stuff, but like, I never really had like the kind of anxiety where you have it every day, all the time. Like, no. And it didn't start until I was in my 20s in my relationship. And I ended up started getting anxiety, where I was having anxiety all day, every day, from the second I woke up till like I finally fell asleep, and it was horrid. And I remember driving around one day just going like, if this is what adulthood is like I don't think I can do it. Like,
I want no part of this.
Yeah. I like literally don't think I can do this. Right. This is what the rest of my life feels like. Absolutely not. And so it really pushed me on a journey. What was interesting is the anxiety that I had, I like projected almost all of it like onto my relationship, which was really not great for my poor husband. You know, it wasn't great for me either, but the gift in that was that had I projected it on anything else, I don't think I would have fought for it so hard. I don't think I would have fought through it. You know, I think because I was so like clearly connected and in love with my husband that like, had it not, like, I don't know, had it even been like about my parent, right? Or had I been like, oh, my parents, my problem or something, like, I think I could have had an easier time just like going, well, I'm just going to cut them off.
Right.
But that's not how it showed up. It showed up in this like very clear, this relationship that's, you know, mirroring you in a lot of ways. And I worked through it. Sometimes it felt like fighting, right? But like I worked through it. And I did that through finding different teachers, through reading different books, like through just a lot of self-help stuff. It's just like anything I could get my hands on that I was like, is this going to help me come to a different understanding of what's going on? And so that was my journey in my 20s. It was a long journey, and I got to a pretty good place before I got married, but I still wasn't like totally there. But like, yeah, like, oh, my 20s was a lot because of this anxiety that was going on. And so I got to a point when I was 29, and I still had a little bit of this kind of just like lingering and kind of like holding on. I was so ready to just be like over it already. You know, I'd been married for like whatever, 3 or 4 years at that point. I was just like, I'm so ready to like let this go. And my friend who had done drugs before was like, hey, you want to do this? Like, it's my birthday. Like, let's do this. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I would love to experience whatever. I thought we were going to take shrooms, right? I was like, that seems interesting. I want to try that. I'd like never really done drugs before, like pot, right? And it was the kind of thing where I was doing it specifically to have a moment, to have a consciousness shift and to do it. And I think drugs can be an incredible tool in that way. When they're done in a way that's controlled, right? I think there's like some, done responsibly. And I had gone into it with the intention to do it responsibly. We were going to just be at her apartment, and it was just going to be the two of us having this experience together. And that was it. Unfortunately, it ended up causing hyponatremia in me, which landed me in the hospital basically I was in a coma for 24 hours. I don't remember going into it. All I remember is taking the drugs, having experience, getting to the point where I was kind of like, I'm not having a great time. Something was like just throwing me off. And I remember her like being like, oh, I'm sorry. And that's all I remember. And then I remember like waking up in the hospital and like seeing like things that were going on. I thought I was dreaming. And I got to a point where I was like, wait, this is really happening. I like woke up and the guy was like, oh, Claire, you're here. You did drugs. It was too much for you. I was just like, wait, this is really happening. And again, I said that like probably like 9 times, and to a point where like they were laughing. They were like, you are really here. This is really happening. And I was like, okay. And so then I had to like unwind that a bit. And like, it was so strange psychologically for me because in the moment, it was just something that it didn't seem real. Mm-hmm. Right. I wasn't there for any of it.
Right.
And so I had to rewind and come to the understanding that like my poor family and my poor husband had just been going through this for the past 24 hours, not knowing if I was going to wake up, because they were like, because when they asked, they were like, is she going to be okay? They're like, we don't know until she wakes up. Like, we don't know. God. We'll know when she wakes up, if she's going to wake up or like what she's going to be like. And so that was horrifying, obviously. And, it took me probably like a week and a half before I went and saw someone who does like different modalities, but like hypnotherapy is one of the things. She does EFT, and she's a good family friend of mine. And she finally stopped me at one point and was just like, Claire, she's like, I need to reflect something back to you. Do you realize that you've said, I almost died probably 5 or 6 times at this point? There's just like no emotion. And because I had it. I just wasn't, again, like I hadn't landed, right? It wasn't clear what had gone on. Mm-hmm. And I finally rephrased it as, I almost never saw any of the people that I love again. Right. Like that was so caught it. Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. And that finally got me to like, to feel it, to feel like that's where I had gone. And I was not there. Thankfully, I was there sitting, I was here, so, I was sitting in the chair talking to her. And so like, it helped me finally feel more empathetic, right? Because they were kind of going like, fuck Claire, like, and no, like, luckily I have a lovely, wonderful family, and none of them were like mad at me, like there was none of that. It was no like, oh, how could you do that? It wasn't none of that, right? It was just more like, so fucking glad you're okay. That was fucking horrible. Please don't ever do anything like that again. Not that I even planned to, right? It was really supposed to be this like one-off thing that I did as an experience for my life, and it was a hell of an experience. And I also got the eye opener that I was looking for, but it was not the one that I bargained for. But I'm glad that it happened. I'm not glad that it happened, but I'm also glad that it happened. Like I'm like, if I could have done it again, but not put any of my family through what they went through, I'd probably do it again. Because from what I learned from my takeaway of it, was a really valuable eye opener.
Yeah.
But it's also been a really difficult one. And it's essentially that coming to terms with the fact that I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. And I always knew that I was going to die, but I never really knew that I was going to die.
Like, we all know.
Yeah, we all know. Right.
And that our loved ones will, and that death is a part of life, but we're all blissfully unaware, I feel like, until it hits.
Until it hits.
Home, or like literally your home, as in yourself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it was so, and it is a gift. It is a gift because it makes you go like, you have to figure this out now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no waiting. There's no waiting till you get that job. There's no waiting till this thing happens. So you have enough money to whatever. Like, you have to figure out loving your life right now. And like, that's something that specifically this past 6 months has started working on me, right? Of trying to make this SoulSpheres and create this business, and putting a lot of pressure on myself, and just going like, yeah, but like, there's no thing that's going to happen that all of a sudden I'm going to feel fulfilled. Like that's a daily practice of feeling fulfilled and appreciating. And like my challenges are not looking at my husband every day and going like, when am I going to lose you? Because knowing that he can die, and just feeling like, or my dog, like I at least think about some of my loved ones dying probably 5 to 10 times a day. I probably do. And like a little bit of that's healthy. Like maybe once every other day would be fine. Like the amount I'm doing it is too much, right? It's too much it's just not, it's starting to distract from the living part.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that like, I can work backwards from here. I think again, you can't know that feeling until you know it. It's not something you can describe to someone else. It's like, it's like trying to describe sight to a blind person. It's just too, like someone can get it, you can try, you can understand, but it's not something that you're going to really fully grasp in the way that it is until you do.
Yeah.
And so that was very eye-opening, heart-opening, world-shattering, world-building, because it's like, right, it did all these things that were like, it did all these things, right? And it just really shifted everything in a way that makes me appreciate things so much more and really just like go like, this is the juiciness, and to like really just like feel into those juicy moments. But also, that's walking that fine line of being like, this feels so juicy and this is so great. And knowing what that's going to look like on the flip side of when that's gone. And I think a lot of it is, and this is interesting actually for me, because I haven't gone through, I can't say I haven't, like I lost my grandfather when I was 14, and then my other grandfather when I was 17, I guess. So, and I was pretty close with both my grandparents. And so those were significant losses.
Notable losses. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just different, I think it's just, you're reminded in a way that feels maybe harder in the beginning. I think the loss of a parent is maybe harder, longer, maybe forever, right? Because it's like having that piece that you want to talk to them about something, right? Whereas like a dog, it's like, it's horrible, but you do get another dog one day. And again, not to say like I am so obsessed with my baby puppy dog, right? But like there's an outlet for that kind of love again. Yeah. Whereas like it's different, a parent, it's different, right? There's that's it. Like that's the parent and that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So it's so strange for me, because I think there is part of me that like, because I haven't had like a super, super major loss. Mm-hmm. That's one of those like direct family members in that way. And I think for me, right, I would think kind of define that as like either my parents or my husband.
Yeah.
Or like maybe one of like my best friends, right? That is just like someone that I rely on connecting with regularly.
Yeah.
And so there is part of me that goes like, am I going to be okay? I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's this dealing with this like pre-grief is, and so that's why this is an interesting
like anticipatory grief.
Yeah, literally anticipatory grief. And it's like, again, a little bit of that's good. I think a little bit of that's helpful because it helps root you in going like, this is special. What you're having right now, this is special, but not going where it becomes sad, right? Because it's like, you don't want to go so far over that it's like, you're feeling so pulled by this pre-grief that you're not actually experiencing it.
Right. Which is so, yeah. I mean, that's so hard. I've talked about this before on the podcast. Like I went through anticipatory grief with both of my parents in their own, cancer declines. And like, there's people out there that feel or say that anticipatory grief is worse than like, I'm going to say actual grief, like when it actually happens, because there are so many things you're like trying to function with in the like at present. And so you're like grieving just what was, what is going to be, but they're still here. But then, if there's like a watching of a decline of any kind, you're like grieving like who they were maybe just weeks prior when they were okay or better, whatever it is. It's like the trippiest experience. And then, the death or the loss happens. And sometimes you're like, I mean, let's be real. Like you sigh a bit of relief. There's like, because you're just like, oh my God, like, not that we're like, oh, good, they're finally gone.
No, of course.
Like,
it's that process. The process is over.
Finally out of pain. I know we can feel very selfish in that moment because we're just like, thank God, like our pain is certainly not over, but having to like witness all of that, we don't want to see our loved ones in pain, in any kind of suffering or whatever. So, well, most sane, normal people don't.
That's a fair qualifier. Yeah, that's fair. Yes.
Gotta get out of here.
Yeah, right.
It's such a weird experience. So I want to like ask you, I'm so curious because, not, again, to your point, like, not that you haven't experienced, like the I'm going to say like classic forms of death through like a grandparent or, losing someone close to you love. Like it sounds like almost went through a little bit of would you say like a death of yourself? Like, how would you describe that? And like, this is going to be like kind of a weird question that I'm asking. And like, I don't know.
No weird questions.
Just this, but like, yeah, like, do you feel like a little piece of yourself, thank God didn't actually die, but like, do you feel like a little piece of yourself like died that day or kind of came out of this coma, so to speak, like, I'm going to say a different person, or did it take you a little bit to get there? Or like, cause I asked this because I feel like there's so many people out there that are grieving this sense of self. So whether it is a loved one that you have lost, or maybe a traumatic event like you went through that happened to us very directly, whatever this looks like, one way or another, we all might have like, not only are we grieving like a maybe significant loss or a loss outside of ourselves, but then like, then we're kind of like, whoa, what do I do now? Who am I? And that process of kind of going inward and trying to figure that out. So like, do you feel like that's like relevant for you?
Interesting.
How would you describe it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I feel like part of me died. I would feel like I feel more like I broke open.
I have a question for you. Are you ready to live your most intentional life after loss? That is exactly what we're doing with my brand new membership. Intentional Life After Loss is designed to take you from simply existing and surviving in your grief after the death of a loved one to truly living and thriving. This is an all-in-one affordable membership program for personal growth, well-being, community, and healing from the death of a loved one from the inside out. We're digging into how to overcome the overwhelm and confusion of grief and tap into an intentional, meaningful life one step at a time. We are creating the most fulfilling, vibrant lives for ourselves as possible after loss. And my friend, we are doing it together. I was my first student here, guys, navigating parent loss and recovery. I was able to strengthen my emotional, physical, and spiritual connection to myself and others one day at a time, and developed methods to create a life greater than I could have even imagined. And you are so capable of this. You can do this too. This is for those who are feeling profoundly overwhelmed and hurting. Perhaps there's no clear path forward without who you've lost. There's zero light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe you can't even find the tunnel right now. You're simply existing, but not really living because it's just too hard, too painful, or you simply don't want to. Life has just lost its luster. But your life is not over. Not even close. And you have a responsibility to live your life as beautifully, meaningfully, and intentionally as possible after loss. My true joy and purpose in life is helping you get there. That is the purpose of this podcast and everything I do. And we can do this together through intentional life after loss. And remember, it's not about getting over it and moving on. It's about trusting yourself and trusting the process and growing around your grief and giving yourself grace as you move forward. It's acknowledging that your loss will always be with you, but you're doing so in a way that's easy to digest, honors your loved ones, and is all about the baby steps. It's done in a way that isn't too daunting or too much too fast. It's about building around your pain. It's supporting yourself on this long, crazy journey with a sense of community alongside the perfect tools to help you. You'll have access to an exclusive community and my expertise and guidance as a grief coach, where you can find support, connection, and empowerment as you go after the life that you want. For more details and information on signing up, click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, it was more like that. And it's funny that I'm saying that because as I just looked over, and I've shared this picture before. This was a painting that my godmother did for me and for my mother, right? But it was hanging in my room. You've probably seen this before. Maybe it'd be really funny if you remember it, because it's from a kid's perspective, it's like, what's happening in that photo? Yeah. But when I was there last Christmas or whatever, I think, or over the summer, I saw it again and I was like, Mom, I really need you to send me that. And so this, and here I'm going to have to unblur my.
Okay. So describe this for anybody who is not watching.
Yes. Okay. So for anyone who's not watching, so there's this woman who's sitting on a lily pad. Maybe it's a lotus lily pad, which would actually make even more sense.
That would be, yeah.
Who's naked and she's sitting like with her feet touching each other, and she's pulling apart, basically like, it's like as if she's unzipped her front and is pulling it apart, and there's the stars in it and behind it. And I just love it so much. And so I have it here sitting in my office so I can see it every day. And like, I feel like this, like I feel like this in a lot of ways. And she's smiling too. We should say this. She just looks like totally joyful and radiant.
Elated.
Yes, totally elated. And like this amount of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Is so beautiful, right? As depicted.
Yes.
But that it's also like, it's raw. You're vulnerable. Like anyone could just reach in, you know, or like there's, I don't know. And it's interesting because I don't really feel like, how do I say this? Through this experience, this breaking open part, I became more protective of myself. And I became more, I stood up for myself more, and there were some shifts that happened in my relationship that were really positive. Right. But part of that was me just going like, this is what I need. I'm going to take care of myself regardless of whether that's going to happen or not. And, you know, just very clearly was like, I'm going to take care of myself regardless of what's going on around. And so that piece was really, really good. But the other part of this being broken open part is that you are just like, you're feeling it. You're not just feeling this, you know, the physical world, right? You're feeling like all of it. You're like so there feeling all of it. Yeah. And like, it's beautiful, but it's a lot. Like that's how I feel.
It's what you make of it too, but it's like, it's very humbling, very vulnerable. Yeah. That's a perfect word for it.
Yes, it does feel so vulnerable. And then to get into what's been interesting here about in the past 6 months, specifically about doing SoulSpheres, is that it's like bringing me, I've been started doing TikTok, and I'm like, oh yeah, TikTok's gonna be this great platform for me. Awesome. And then like I started doing it and like not getting the responses that I wanted, or not getting right. Like, I know, like, it's so exhausting. I know. And I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And it's like, I was saying to someone else, it's like math, right? I feel like learning how to do TikToks, like learning math, like it feels really frustrating, but like there's a clear formula. And like, once you figure it out, it's going to feel so much. Yeah. And it's been interesting too. Cause like for me, this like raw and vulnerable part and like sharing on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then kind of like putting yourself out there, but then going like, well, if you don't get enough likes, you don't get enough of this or that, like, it, you know, but then is it enough? Like, is it like, are 1 million views going to be enough, or am I still going to feel
right? Where does it end?
No, right. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I'm like very clear that this is about me filling myself up and about me being the magic, right? And me just creating the magic for myself and not looking to the outside. I'm saying this really articulately, and that's great, but doesn't mean I've like embodied it yet.
Embodied this, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm doing good job. I'm working with a hypnotherapist, which has been
love that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a fun project because it's really pushing me into like my next growth phase. I'm like, oh, like 20s was all about, figuring out how to not have anxiety and coming into my own and, being rooted in my own truth and being able to speak my truth and all of that good stuff. And like now my 30s is, I don't know if I can even describe it yet because I think I'm still figuring it out, but
early into our 30s. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Exactly. Yeah. But in
age us.
8 years, I'll be able to, have an idea of what the 30s were all about. But, if I'm seeing at least a glistening of what it is, it's about being able to create my own magic. Right. I think that's probably the best description.
Beautiful. That is like, we're aligned on so many things, but it's like one of my, I love that word so much because there is so much magic in life. And I know when people think of magic, they're just like literal magic, and like, there is some literal magic out there maybe, but it's really just like creating this. I've said this before on the podcast too. It is your most magnetic, vibrant, like what you were saying in the beginning, I just want to create a life that I am so happy and fulfilled with. And so like, that's it. And loss is a part of that. Death is a part of that. Grief is a part of that. Trauma is a part of that. The things that we go through that we did not expect, we did not think was going to be in our plan, never could have seen coming. But, and I won't even get into this on this episode, but, there's so much, I hear so much talk out there as far as like, is this part of your dharma, your soul's purpose, or your journey here? And I know that's so hard depending on where someone maybe here listening is with either their grief or just like where they are in their life. Like that might be too much to hear. So just that, but like taking a step back and ultimately, like doing what I'm doing what you're doing, being like, okay, what can I learn from this? How can this crack me open? And yeah, that might be a really uncomfortable and painful and triggering and, cringy at times process, but like
cringy, that's such a good word.
Right? Depending on the day, but like where and how can we learn from that and, take that with us into this, whatever next phase of life that we're in. And sometimes trauma and grief and loss and all of that causes that, it opens us up to things we never thought that possible. I've said this before. I've never thought losses become gains would become a thing. It probably wouldn't if my parents were still here. So like, and I've had someone ask me that before, like, and he asked it in a very eloquent way than what I'm about to say, but he was kind of like, do you feel like your parents died or like had to die, so to speak, for you to embody soul's purpose in this lifetime of providing this healing, this grief support, whatever you want to call it. And I almost like wasn't even offended by that question. I was like, honestly, yeah, you might have just hit on something there.
Yeah, interesting.
And that can be so offensive to people. So I don't want to, if anybody's not in that mindset, don't force it. But after a lot of self-healing and self-discovery and self-education, like it sounds like we've done a lot of the same things as far as like the self-help stuff and all of, like outside of that or any help that you get from someone, like so much of this process is within us. And it is something we have to go inward to do and explore and own as part of like, okay, well, I didn't plan on this. I didn't ask for this. This was, this was not supposed to happen. Whatever that we can feel that way. That's valid. But it did.
Yeah.
So what now? What do you make of it? And that all being said, I do want to shift into SoulSpheres. I know you're just talking about it a little bit. So, and I know you've kind of said a couple of little things about it so far, but like, take us through that. Like, what is SoulSpheres exactly? What is the why behind it? how did you come to create it? I know you kind of, it's been in the works for a long time, but also like, how did everything that you've maybe been through help kind of birth it into the world and what it is now?
So before we even do that, I need to say about just the last topic, right? About like the things happening. And a good friend of mine was saying the other day that she's like, I'm asking the universe, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. Right. That piece, and going like, okay, well, even if it's really hard, even if it feels like shit, it's still going to be, it still can be for me in some way if I choose to go down that path and choose to find that part. And that's why with TikTok and with whatever challenges I'm facing, I'm like, okay, this is happening not to me. I'm not some victim of this. It's just happening for me so I can work through some things with myself, whether it is, getting over some ego parts that I have, and whether it's, loving the experience regardless of the outcome. That's a big one that I would like to be practicing. And so, I'll rewind here and say that we have a family business. We moved down to Florida last March to help my dad support our family food business. And we ran into an issue last October that basically pushed our timeline out like a year. So being me, who like literally can't sit still. And that means that like, oh, even if I have a full-time job, I still need to have like a side job. That's been how I have been for the past 9 years of my life, at least. Probably more than that. I feel like I've always been doing more than one job because I have just been like on a mission to be self-employed since I graduated college. That is like my mission. I'm working on it. And so I was sitting idly and I was like, no, I need to put all this other extra energy into something else. Cause like our food business was just kind of on hold in a lot of ways. And so, like I said, I had this point, I was walking down the street or walking our dog and I'm like, oh yeah, TikTok, right? Okay. I should do this. Don't do it. I did it. And then I started really working on the SoulSpheres, right? Alongside this and showing my process and all of that. And so what they are, and I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that it's based off of the 21 grams theory that says that the soul weighs 21 grams. That's the weight. And so in my BFA project, my degree project out of college, my thesis was essentially around why are we who we are? And I basically did this in 3 expressions. One was this like wild spine that went like down your back. Okay. You remember pictures of it? Okay.
Absolutely remember that. It was stunning.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And so that was such a fun piece to make. It took me like 100 hours of like actually making it. It was like such a wild thing to do. And like had like all the individual pieces representing each part of the spine. And then I like magneted together. And that was cool. So that was expressing that we are who we are because of our physiology, like 100%, right? We are who we are because of that.
Yeah.
The other piece was the other spectrum was SoulSpheres, which was saying we are who we are because of this soul. And then the in between was we are who we are because of a mixture, right? It's an interplay between those 2 aspects. And that was this helmet that basically had screws that would push little pressure plates into different different pressure points on your head that could help relieve anxiety or relieve different things. So it's kind of saying like, hey, you are who you are because your soul, but like your physiology obviously affects how that expresses too. And so I believe that like it's a mixture of the 2, right? You've got both of those things going on. Most people don't want to wear a metal helmet though. So I was like, but there was this piece of the SoulSpheres of being able to really honor that part of us, that part that is non-physical. And in my BFA project, they actually weren't wearable at all. They were actually just these plastic 3D printed pieces that had different names on them. So it was basically this little like layout that had all these different names as like the presentation of the 3. And but that they all, weighed the 21 grams, which was cool.
Yeah.
And so, but then from there, and I don't remember, honestly, it might've been my husband who was like, oh, you should do like a pendant version because the balls, right, they were, 1.5 inches in diameter because they were the plastic, right? Versus metal, obviously they get much smaller. And what's really cool, and I'm sorry, I keep hitting my microphone. What's really cool is that I have 3 different versions right now. There's the steel versions, there's the silver version, the solid silver, and then there's a solid gold version. And so the steel is actually the largest, then the silver is somewhere in between the gold and the steel, and the gold is the smallest because just the density is increasing on those metals. So that's like a cool, this is kind of neat to kind of visualize and feel the weight of them. Okay. And so I had really gifted them over the past 10 years. I was making them, I had a jewelry line, but I was in that mindset of not knowing anything about marketing where I was like, oh, if you build it, they will come. And then no one came. And then I was like, oh, it's not working. And then I just didn't do it anymore. It was too expensive. Yeah. And now 10 years later, knowing everything that I know and having all of the, history of everything that I've gone through, whether it was, we ran a film festival and we did all these different things the past 10 years, that I was able to come back to it and say, there's a process here. And I know I can implement that process to actually get it in front of enough eyes to, to get in front of the people who resonate with the message. And but in between now and then, I had gifted them to people who had lost loved ones. And it was just always so impactful to gift, right? Because it's like, there's nothing good to say. There's literally nothing good to say when someone's in pain. Yeah. But it was always so touching, and people were always just like, this is so moving. And like, you need to do this. Like, this is something you need to do.
It's so unique. It's so unique. Yeah.
Thank you. And I didn't, because it was too expensive. I had too many things going on, what have you. But now the one good thing, having a full-time job affords me, right, is that I was able to put money aside to be able to put into this side project and be able to develop them and develop my packaging and, be able to create it in such a way that I knew that I wasn't going to build it and they were going to come, right? I was going to build it, and then it's going to take me a lot more work to continue building it and grow it.
It's very humbling, this process.
Yeah, it really is a humbling process. And, but I do it because of how impactful it is and how meaningful it is to the people who are able to gift it and the people who are able to receive it. And, I haven't sold a ton of them, but for the people that I have sold them to, the feedback that I've gotten has just been so beautiful. And it's been so touching. And every time I read something, that someone just loves it in the way that they do, I'm just like, this is why I'm doing this. This feels so good. And I want to be able to, that's my why. And I was like, and this gives, and I love that I'm being able to offer other people this feeling, whether they get it for themselves, because what it's turned into, and this is honestly still developing, but what it's turned into is me also, building my Keeping Spirit blog, which is about all the stuff that I learned in my 20s, which is about how to help with anxiety. Here's the different resources. Here are the things that I do for myself, talking about that, and then pulling in different people who are experts in these different fields. I spoke with a death doula. That was such an incredible conversation. Oh my gosh, such an amazing conversation. So being able to pull in experts in these different ways, I'm learning something. I'm being able to share this information with other people. And I would love to just keep growing that to be a resource. And what I'm trying to bridge at this point is how do I bridge this piece that it's obviously the SoulSpheres are for people who are grieving, but that they're also for people who just want that memory and not that memory, but that connection back to themselves, right? And who they are. Beautiful. And realizing that, and I think maybe I need to pull it all from a grief space, because I think what's interesting, and this kind of comes back to it all, and you can't know what you don't know, right? Maybe you'll feel different in 6 months about relating having a dog to a child, right? Or, I agree with you at this stage in the game. I agree with you. And I'll be very interested to see what you think in 6 months from now. But same thing. I really believe that we're faced with so much grief. It's not all grief about losing people.
It can be grief. We talked about death of self, death of a relationship. I mean, there's so many
right. Absolutely.
It's so complex. Yes. Yeah.
Literally things ending. Yes. And I think that we're all faced with fear and grief. Mm-hmm. And being able to know that we can persist and survive through fear and grief, and not just survive, but truly thrive with those things, alongside those things, not in spite of them, because they're part of the experience. Right. And so I'm realizing that I think that's maybe how I need to have more of my messaging around why does keeping spirit, like why does the blog exist alongside this other part? Because it is the beacon in the dark kind of thing, from coming from like that sense of it. And that's why I think it's right. It just like aligns so perfectly with your losses becoming
everything you were just saying. I was like, preach, girl. Yeah. Where can I sign up? Like,
yeah. So like that feels so good. And I want to just keep building this community of people. This was funny. This was this morning. I was meditating and just trying to do some visualization. And I was trying to like visualize having a ton of money in my bank account. And the reason I care about the money is so I can go buy a farm and grow my own food, right? You know what I mean? It's not
there. Yeah. Yeah. It's not always necessarily, I was talking to another coach, and sorry, not to interrupt you. I'll just say
no, it's okay. Yeah.
It's like, it's not always about like wanting yachts and Ferraris and all the things, although I would love a Ferrari, let's be real. But it was like, it's not necessarily about buying all the bags and whatever. It's just about like, unfortunately, there is some sense of abundance that money can give us. And money is a huge source of stress. But at the end of the day, it is an exchange of energy.
Yes.
So,
yes. Oh my God. Yes.
It is. I know this is not a money conversation, but it's anyway, I just want to validate that because that's so true. And I know like how much stress money can create on top of our current grief or whatever. Like just having that freedom. I just want to like validate anybody here who's going through.
Oh my gosh.
I think so many of us are. I can certainly relate to what you're saying. This overarching, like, okay, understanding kind of like what we said earlier, just, death and grief and all of that and whatever form it is so a part of life. It is what we choose to make of it. And it is a choice. Like I certainly feel that way. Like it doesn't always feel that way. Certainly in the beginning, there's a lot of confusion and feeling very lost and angry or whatever at our circumstances.
Of course, right.
At the end of the day, like we do have this beautiful gift and opportunity to choose to go in a better direction, right? Like we don't have to succumb to it, even though I know it feels like that's the easy choice sometimes. And sometimes we can't help that, especially if it's early on, like if that's so par for the course. And I always have to remind myself of that because I've gotten to a very good place in my grief, but that was not always that way. And if I was hearing some of the things I was saying out loud right now, I'd be like, you are absolutely full of shit, this girl. Like, I don't know what she's saying. Unfollow, whatever. It's just like planting these seeds and just instilling that hope. And I certainly think you do that. But then, and this, again, this beautiful like representation of not only just, what's what I love so much about your jewelry too, is like people can kind of associate it with whatever they want. They can associate it with their loved one if they want. They can associate it with just themselves or with both or whatever. And it's just this amazing physical representation and reminder of like what it is to be here. Like here we are, full circle.
Yes.
Right?
What it is to be here. Yes, exactly.
And what we're meant to do here and what our soul's journey and all of these amazing, empowering things, which doesn't always feel empowering. I know it can feel very overwhelming. And it's, that concept is not an easy one to get to sometimes, but like when you put in that work and when you do that and you really sit and meditate and think on it and all of it, you're just like, wow, okay, there's more here. Like there's a lot more here actually.
Yeah, right. Really. I know sometimes it does. It gets to that point. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think, something else that's interesting that I think, and I'd be curious to hear what your perspective is on this when it comes to, right, the grieving process. I think and social media obviously fucks this up too, because we're so inundated with these pictures of perfection, with these pictures of things being easy, with these pictures of things being separate from where you're at, right? Whatever the case may be. And it's easy. I mean, like for me, like I know that that's not reality, right? You know, some people have it better than others, but right. But I know that like the picture perfect things that we see are not reality. That doesn't mean my subconscious believes it. Right? My subconscious is looking at it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No,
and I think, you know, so in our culture so much, especially in American culture, we're like, oh, we're the best, we're the greatest, everything's great, an American dream. And, that's just what we grew up with, it's just is what it is. But so when things come up in our lives that are hard or quote unquote bad, we go, oh my God, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, nothing's wrong. This is just the way that life is. And I think it's so funny that growing up, my parents never said, and I know, I'm sure some people's parents say this, but my parents in the growing up that I had never said life is hard. Life is painful. That's okay.
Yeah.
You best believe I am saying that kind of thing to my kid.
Yeah.
Like, we're not expecting
expectations.
Yeah. But like we're not expecting things to be perfect, but can you create magical things? Can you create incredible things in your life? Absolutely. Is it going to also come along with difficulty and hardship and other things too, that you're going to work through? 100%. But those are going to be amazing lessons if you let them be, right? Being able to like create that kind of expectation. And I think, right, I know I have it for myself when things are going wrong. It's like, well, why is this happening? This is par for course. It's just what happens. Like shit just happens, but also amazing, beautiful, incredible things also happen.
Yeah.
And so I think especially with grief, you can go like, well, this is horrible. Why is this happening to me again? Like, why is this happening to me? Why is this so bad and wrong? It's like, well, no, it hurts, but it can hurt and be painful and also be good. Even good. Totally. Even good. Right.
No, it's so simple, but so true and so impactful. And whether we choose to believe this or not, are I'm not going to say like selfish beings, but we tend to make things about ourselves.
Sure we are. Of course we are.
Guess what? Sometimes it's actually not about us. Sometimes there's no reason for things. Sometimes shit just happens. Sometimes parents get sick or we have really traumatic events or, hi, welcome to life. So, and it's tough. There's so much conditioning with grief that it depends on who we were raised by. I mean, there's another rabbit hole I could go down.
Right.
As to why people process or don't process grief as they do. But I think that's what's so amazing and beautiful about this space. And I have people ask me all the time, they're just like, how are you like in the grief and death space? Like, isn't that depressing? It is so far from depressing. It's actually the most inspiring thing I've ever done with my life.
Oh, I love that.
It's like, you never know, right? It's all about, like you were saying earlier, opening our heart and our minds and our souls and cracking ourselves open. And, I just love how full circle this conversation is. This is like lighting me up so much, but it's so true. And it's so complex, but it's so simple.
It's so simple. And honestly, I think that we overthink a lot of this, but I think that's part of like what I'm doing right now is going like, oh, I'm trying to figure this out. And it's like, you don't have to figure anything out.
Right.
You literally don't have to figure anything out. Just do the thing you want to do. Just be the thing you want to be. There's nothing to figure out. Everything's great. Just keep doing it. Just keep loving it. Just keep doing like, this is it. Like there's literally nothing. And I think if you think about this from like a child, like, are there things that you have to learn for like the life stuff? Yes. But when it comes to ease, I don't think that there's anything to learn other than just let it be easy.
Yeah.
And that's just getting out of your own way.
Yes. Beautifully said. Yeah. And I think if we're like living in alignment and when we really discover that, and there's no going back after that, like you are just not the same. So I just implore anybody listening here today, like dig into that a little bit today or meditate on it or journal about it or whatever, like envisioning your happiest, healthiest, best, most vibrant and beautiful life, like high in the sky things. Like, what would that look like for you? And then, sure, it takes some tangible work sometimes, but then it's also like, okay, how can you start embodying that? And then there is almost like a little sense of like, if you build it, they will come sort of thing. But it's more, it's like you're attracting that. You're living in that like higher brain, higher frequency thinking. And no one can take that away from you once you're there and once you start living into that and tapping into that. And
that's literally the magic. The magic is not getting the thing, not getting the external thing.
Yeah.
Because the truth is that the external thing may never look like what you imagined it to look like. But if you're anchoring on the feeling of gratitude and loving your life and doing that as much as you can in your life right now, you're doing it. Yeah. It's already happening.
Exactly.
Nothing else has to happen.
Right. And we just have to take a step back and realize that sometimes, and that's hard. And it's not always easy to be self-aware in that way. And so I'm not saying at all that this is easy.
No, none of this is easy at all. And like, I certainly have not figured out the implementation of it. Like I know what I'm saying is correct. Right. But I still am 100%, having to figure out how to do that on a daily basis, because it's a practice. It's literally a practice. It's literally something. And I think it's a self-awareness practice. It's a, meditation practice. I think I will say that I definitely think you can jumpstart this kind of shift with hypnotherapy. I think hypnotherapy is an incredibly amazing tool for anything that you're trying to shift out of. And I've definitely used it to my benefit at a number of times. And something I would love to do. So it's another long-term goal of mine is to become a hypnotherapist. Like, did I say that? I don't think I said that.
No.
I said that to someone else today. So I would love to do that. And so what's kind of neat,
the universe.
Yeah. Putting it to the universe. And part of me doing SoulSpheres right now and building that community. I mean, it's going to be the same community who I would think would be interested in what I'm doing.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I see the connection.
6 years from now. Right. So that feels good to be kind of laying a foundation for that.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's so inspiring. It gets you excited. And it does kind of these goals, no matter how tangible or whatever they are, like it really can I'm going to say move us out of our grief. Like, not that there's like necessarily an in and out of it. We're always kind of in it in a way. Yeah, it's always part of us and our life right now. But that's such a beautiful testament to just what you can create with it. And, just giving yourself grace and realizing like, okay, this might not make sense. This might never make sense, but I'm still here. And I gotta, like you said, I gotta figure something out. So it's like
100%.
That's all what you make of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you brought something up for me with that. It's just like the creation of SoulSpheres, because I never really did say that about, there was this impetus for me kind of feeling like I was sitting idly, which is hilarious because I was not idle at all. But there was this part of wanting to come back and own more of the spiritual side of myself outwardly and start. And before I took the job that I'm in right now, I got really clear that I wanted to do something that had to do with healing. Mm-hmm. That was very, very clear for me. And I didn't fulfill that with the job I took. But I'm fulfilling it in this way and growing it out in that way. So that feels correct. And like me on my soul's purpose, and then removing the ego part, which is like, well, I'm not the only person that's doing that. And that's okay. Right. This is a collective movement of, people who are wanting to be awake and wanting to help people and wanting to move into this space that is authentic and raw and delicious and all that good stuff.
So juicy. There has to be more than one of us. But what's so beautiful about this, I'll just end by saying this, is like we all bring our own little secret sauce and ways of talking about things and thinking about things. And we don't all do TikTok's the same or Reels the same. Right. Like, so when people are absorbing this and seeing it in a bunch of different ways, like, that's good. And so like there is, I get it. There's so much imposter syndrome out there. There's so much like comparison. I am so guilty of it. I do it all the time.
Oh my God.
Still fall prey to it. Right. It's so hard. So social media is a whole nother story. But just remembering that at the end of the day, that we are all so unique. Our grief is also unique, but we all are so capable of bringing something so special to the world. So, and figuring it out yeah, it sounds overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. It's just like, okay, what's my soul's purpose? I don't know, but it's like, but also don't put pressure on it though. Right. Like there are ways you can guide yourself. There are ways you can tap into that, but it is a really beautiful journey. So with that all being said, I have one last question for you. And I always love asking this, just to kind of wrap this up. What does finding gains from your losses mean to you? And again, you can say loss however you want to see this here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes right back to the, what's the universe doing for you? Not to you, right? It's how do you say, well, what's coming out of this that I'm going to create? What's coming out of this? What is this loss opening up space for?
Yeah. Oh, I love how you just said that. Yeah.
Because even though it's painful and it's a loss, it does open up space for something else.
Yeah.
And what is that? And that's a whole creative opportunity to find something else. And and I can sit here and I can imagine to your point of kind of thinking from the viewer, listener's perspective, going well, I just lost my mom. I'm not going to get a new mom. But right. But that was someone that you had a special connection with. Maybe there is opportunity to now foster a connection with some other person that has maybe a wisdom or something that, lends something else. It's not going to be, you're not going to replace it. It's not about replacing it. It's just about what's going to grow in that new space, because there is some space there that's been freed up by a very natural process, right? By something that was meant to happen. And I think to say that too, right? With culture, our culture too, we don't talk about death in a way that is embracing it.
We're so death averse.
You can embrace death. You can, it's not. And when you do, and I think I said this to you on the phone when we had spoke, that my dad and I had went to a lawyer and set up a trust for him. And so that when he passed away, it just makes that whole financial transaction so much easier.
Yeah.
And having these conversations with him about him dying, he's not actively dying right now. That's not something we're not oh, he's in the process, he doesn't have anything that's terminal. He's 74, he's just alive, right? He's just alive and
he's just being.
Yes, he's just being. But he's gonna die at some point. And it could be in 5 years, it could be in 25 years, right? You just don't have, it could be tomorrow, right? And that's for any of us, right? Yep. But being able to talk about it and being able to say it, and him just going well, we should go do this because, guess I'm kind of realizing that I am going to die one day, just
not getting any younger.
Yep. Gonna die. And it's funny and it's a little sad, but it's so much more fun to be sad with him right now and just be yeah, it's fucking sad that you're going to die and that's going to suck. But do you know how good that feels to be able to say to him and he's alive and we're kicking, right? That feels fucking great, because because when he does die, I'll be able to know that there was nothing unsaid. There was nothing, and when you embrace that before, you get that opportunity. But it's we do so much death avoidance that makes it bigger than it has to be.
It's so damaging. Yeah. I love that. I love how you just said that. It does make it so much bigger than it has to be. And fear looks bigger that way. And it just does not serve us, period. Well said. I could not have said that any better. That was such a beautiful way to end that. I was just mic drop. Anyway, that all being said, such a beautiful and impactful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story, all the things you said today. I love keeping some of these conversations sort of open to just how it flows, because I love the direction this went in. And I just feel so many people need this right now. When this is going to launch, we're going into a new year. So I think this is such a beautiful time to sit and think about this. Yes, the holidays are difficult. It's tough without our loved ones. That's an understatement. But, grief can be knocking on our door from a million different ways, but there is no better time. You can do this any day of the week, right? But there's no better time than going into a new year, a new space, to sit and think about some of these things and what we want for ourselves and those around us in our life, and our ultimately limited time here at the end of the day. So, so beautiful. Thank you so much. And also, where can everybody find you? This will all be in the show notes, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my website at soulspheres.co, not com.co. And it's SoulSpheres plural. And that's where you can connect with me, check it out, check out the blog, check out all the different necklaces. And would love to connect with you there.
Yes. And TikTok, all the good things.
Oh, and TikTok. Yeah, right. That's thanks. And TikTok and Instagram. I don't have much on Instagram at this point just because I'm overwhelmed enough with one platform, but all at Keeping Spirit on those platforms.
Amazing. Yeah. So good. And seriously, you guys check out these necklaces. They're so beautiful. They're so clearly high quality, but just so like, I'm going to say subdued. I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just
no. Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're very like aesthetically pleasing, obviously, but just so beautifully done. And
thank you.
You make an amazing gift for, treat yourself if you want to. That's what or a loved one, all the good things. But there's just so much beautiful meaning behind it. And I think we got into a lot of that today, which I'm so happy about, and such a beautiful why behind it and mission. And it comes from such a heart-centered place. So absolutely. Everybody go check them out.
Thank you so much, Tara.
You're welcome. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Claire. I appreciate it. Such a deep and whirlwind of a conversation here. Oh my goodness. I don't know about you, but coming out of this recording, I was feeling so many feels, so many different emotions and things coming up for me. Like this one is one that really made me sit and think a bit, kind of reevaluate some things, but also I feel so enlightened and empowered at the same time. And I really hope it impacted you in some similar way today, my friend. I just really hope you enjoyed it. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode or what you're hearing so far on this podcast, I would truly appreciate you sharing it with a friend or two who could perhaps use it as well, or leaving a review or a rating wherever you're listening. So that way I can better bring this grief and loss support to countless people out there who could really need it, just like you. And your ratings and reviews help get this podcast more seen and heard. So it is always very appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, as always, and I'll catch you in the next episode. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps that you're taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, to learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog and for more coping tools. Explore my Grief Becomes Gains online course if you need some extra grief support and coaching. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your story, and supporting you however I can. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.